welcome back to the Bites and Bites podcast. I am your host, Kristen King. That's right, new name, same mission. More on that during the break. Today's episode is one that hits right at the intersection of technology, climate, and the food that sustains us. My guest, Francisco Martin-Rayo, CEO and co-founder of Helios AI, a company using artificial intelligence to forecast agricultural prices, supply disruptions, and climate risk long before it happens. We talk about how AI can actually predict food shortages, why climate change is forcing farmers to adapt faster than ever, and what happens when the systems that feed us start to break. It's an eye-opening conversation that connects global markets, dinner tables, and the human stories behind both. So grab your coffee or tea and your curiosity. This one's going to make you think differently about what's on your plate. Enjoy. In Bites and Bites tradition, we're going to start with favorite food and favorite food memory. So go for it.
Yeah. It's kind of a random favorite food. So my grandmother was a refugee from Spain. She came over from Spain to Mexico during the Civil War, and she used to make lasagna, which is not what you would expect a woman from Barcelona to make. But she used to make it as the special dish for me, and she used to make the pasta and the bechamel sauce and the meat sauce all from scratch. And we started making it during Christmas as kind of like the family tradition. And so my wife is Kurdish. I'm kind of Mexican. I guess my grandparents were from Spain. And so it's probably the weirdest Christmas dish for a Mexican Kurdish family to have is lasagna. But it's been really nice to have that almost like common history, right? In terms of what I was fed by my grandparents and what I'm now feeding my children, and hopefully what I'll feed my grandchildren one day. So that's been a really happy memory recently.
That sounds like a great Christmas meal, to be honest.
Yeah,
I mean,
thanks.
You don't have to go.
The bechamel really makes all the difference. If you make it from scratch, it's delicious. Yeah.
A lot of people skip that step, and I think it's a super important step too. I haven't had like a proper lasagna and I don't even know how long, to be honest.
It's not that hard. I mean, it was a little daunting at the beginning, but I prefer that to ricotta. Don't love ricotta.
Really?
Yeah.
Actually, I do love ricotta though, in general. No, that's fantastic. And that's also probably tied to your favorite food memory then, is because it's with family and together, or unless it's not. So
no, that's it. I think it's the food, right? I think it's really nice to have your whole family sit around a table and eat. They call it, in Spanish, sometimes it's called sobremesa, which is like after the food is gone, you're still lingering around the table and chatting and having more wine and, eating now whatever's left over that's kind of cold. Just really happy memories around that.
I love that. That's like one of my favorite things to do with people is after we've eaten, we never get off the table. We just sit there and just, like you said, pick on whatever's left over. If it's like the bread or whatever, cold meal or...
Yeah. And like an hour in, you're taking like the cold bread, you're dipping it in the cold lasagna. It's fine.
Yeah, I love that actually. And then, of course, the wine's moving around or whatever, coffee's coming out or whatever's happening. Yeah, those are great memories. We usually cleared the table of food. Well, we keep the little food bits and we would start games. So games would start and the conversations would continue. And it was always Tiles. It was the game that we used to play with my grandparents.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Now that I've taught it to my stepsons. So now, of course, they're beating me really badly, actually. It's fine.
That's the goal, right? The next generation should be better than we are.
It's fine. I feel like my grandfather's smiling and he's laughing, that good old hearty laugh that he has when I'm losing. So it's okay. But yeah, that's what it's about, right? It's about the connection. It's about the people. That's what food does for us. Besides the nourishment. Yeah, that's what's great. I love that. Now I'm craving lasagna. So thank you for that. Gonna have to take care of that problem. But go ahead and introduce yourself so everybody knows who you are.
Yeah, I'm Francisco Martin-Rayo. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Helios Artificial Intelligence. We are the preeminent climate risk platform. We have predicted 90% of all agricultural disruptions for 64 commodities across 85 countries. And we predict the price of agricultural commodities 5 times better than industry averages, which is really awesome.
And I'm sure most people probably look at you and say, okay, then you can tell us how much an avocado is going to cost.
That is exactly what we do. Yes, that is on the platform.
Yes. And I'm sure that hopefully nobody blames you for that price or gives you a hard time when you tell them what it is, if that ever comes up in conversation, because people get very uppity about avocado prices of all things.
I mean, they've been pretty crazy. I mean, the other day, I think I paid like $3 for an avocado. I said, well,
you need to come out my way since we're both in Virginia, because I only pay $1.50 for mine.
And you're further away from the hub, I think. Interesting.
I'm actually not. There is a distribution center very close to me because it's the last city before you head out into the western part of West Virginia.
That might be why, yeah.
So yeah, and actually I know that there's a lot of groceries hubs that are coming into this area that the distribution like system in this area is decent. Not to mention farm to table is very close here because it's still agricultural out of this area. So, I mean, I generally think that that's good. That you want to be closer to your food.
I think it's a wonderful thing. We have a very good partnership with a farm out in Middleburg. So we take the team to visit. We're tracking to see how climate is impacting their different crops and the decisions they make. It's an incredible business. I mean, it's like you have to be the most optimistic person in the world to be a farmer because everything is perfect, you make like 5%. If anything goes wrong in that season, you're done. Like you're just at a loss. And also all the hats that they wear, the fact that they have to be like meteorologists and like midwives and plumbers and technicians and engineers.
It's wild how much what they do. And the aptitude is so high. It's not just like I put seed in ground and I water. It's so many other factors to it. Marketing, their tech, they do cyber. Like there's so many aspects to it. And nobody knows. That's the thing that's so hard, that nobody knows all the things they do or how your food gets to you because our modern world has given us such privilege that we don't even understand where our food comes from at all. And it is frustrating, but also kind of like amazing that we've done that system, but also it's such a big system. And it's really complicated.
It is. I would encourage everyone of your listeners, right? I mean, go visit a farm.
Yes, please.
Not like an apple picking farm, like a proper farm. They love typically, right? They love having people over. You can pay, visitors pass. You can buy some fresh eggs and all that stuff. It makes an enormous difference. It'll be really cool.
It really does. And yeah, agreed. If you do want to go to like the trendier little like pick your flowers, pick your, whatever, go hang out with a cow. That's fine. Go for it. I know that there's a ranch, technically a producer of beef that's somewhere between here and there in our area that they do these amazing like tours of their facility as well as they do a whole like beef tasting. So they do like, I think they're a Kobe beef farm and they will do this like age tasting.
Signs for it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little pricey, but I was like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And maybe appreciate it. I mean, they're going to spend some money to eat some steak, but it's, can't get any fresher, honestly. And if you're into that, like, that's really cool. And there's so many vineyards in the area and there's so much agriculture in our zone. It's so amazing.
Yeah, Virginia is really wonderful. I did read this interesting study as well that says if you actually get primarily or all 100% grass-fed beef, the saturated fat content is lower than grain-fed. And so it's actually much healthier for you to eat that type of red meat.
Yeah, and it's interesting because a lot of people don't know that all cattle is actually finished on grass. So it really is grass-fed in some regards. Not fully. I guess there's some different layers and rules to this. And forgive me to all the ranchers that are listening because I have not asked the right questions because I have several ranchers that I now speak to quite regularly. And they remind me that cows are finished on grass. And I'm like, oh, like it's like almost like, duh, I should have known that. Like that makes sense. But like also like I'm an idiot because I don't live on a ranch, and I don't know these things because I'm so far removed from my food system. So
yeah, it's exactly that point, right? What are chickens finished on, et cetera,
Yeah. And chickens, that's a complicated conversation, of course.
We have one of the farmers we work with, she said she really does believe that they come from dinosaurs, which I think, makes sense. She says, if I lay down too long next to them, they'll peck my eyes out. They don't care. They're terrifying type of animals, which is not what you usually think about when you look at chickens.
Your background, though, let's give a little more detail about your background because I find it fascinating how you got from your background to where you are here. So let's talk about your background.
Yeah, thanks. I started a bunch of companies, all in technology. My first company I started as a senior in undergrad. It was a cool television technology company. Did a bunch of others. Did a lot of work around digital transformation, which is just a fancy way of saying, how do you bring like cutting edge technology to legacy industries? None of the industries like being called legacy. We learned that.
No.
But I also used to import avocados from Mexico at one point. And it was the reason, like seeing what the food supply system was like, seeing what was coming along in terms of like technological changes and knowing what was happening with climate change that we said, we think we can do something really special in this space and launched Helios.
So it was really kind of I saw the need, it's there, so we're going to go for it to launch this company rather than like, oh, this is going to be a really cool profit-driven thing. It was like betterment of humanity kind of, we need to do this. This needs to happen.
Yeah, we're really, I mean this apolitically, right? Like we've really bungled kind of climate change, right? We have to get used to living in a world that is 2 to 3 degrees hotter. I mean, we hit that threshold recently. But if I say it's 2 to 3 degrees hotter, that means at the ends of your distribution, there's some really wonky stuff happening. And it's already wreaking havoc on your food supply system. And, our job is to provide you with technology to predict where those disruptions are happening, predict how the prices are going to change, so you can decrease the level of food insecurity. It's pretty brutal otherwise.
you so much for listening and sticking with me these last few weeks. I'm sure you've noticed that things have been a little quieter on the upload and download front of the podcast. Well, that's for a really good reason. I got married. I just want to say how much I appreciate all the congratulations, messages, and well wishes that came in from around the world. You all are super duper wicked incredible. And speaking of incredible, we just passed 13,000 downloads. That milestone means so much to me. Every listen, every share, and every kind of comment helps keep these conversations going. And again, I appreciate it when you tell me you're a listener. If you're enjoying the show, please remember to like, share, and leave a quick review. It really helps more people find us and join these important discussions about food and agriculture. Thanks, and let's get back to the show.
Which is huge because people don't realize actually how insecure a lot of places in the world are, especially the ones that really have had the most effect by climate change. I find it really interesting too, because people, when they think climate change, they think of like polar ice caps melting, and they think of polar bears, they think of, other displacement with wildlife. And yes, absolutely think those things because they're important to think about, but also how we manage agriculture and where we do it and how we do it and what can grow where. A great example I have, which is kind of a funny example in a way, is the southeast of the UK actually has fantastic sparkling wine. And that is because of climate change. It actually rivals champagne. And I realize anybody in France who's listening probably just like threw me across the room, and I apologize.
But the Brits are cheering you on. They're very excited about this.
And I've had it, and I've been there, and I've been to the vineyards, and they're amazing. And it's so inspiring to see how people are trying to overcome climate change issues and make good things happen from it. Now, this is what we have to do, is adapt. And that's what's going to happen. But in some places, we won't be able to adapt because it will just be gone. Yeah. I'm thinking about like fisheries and things like that is really complicated. And again, not to praise the UK, but they are doing some really great things when it comes to fisheries because we just reached a capacity of overfish or other issues that have happened. I find it really interesting to see what other really cool, innovative ways we're going to kind of overcome this, and realize wine isn't going to sustain the world. It helps, but it's not like the thing. It would be interesting to see if we're going to turn towards more greenhouse or if we're going to turn towards more urban farming and things like that.
I think it'll have to be a combination. I mean, it's exactly to your point on how to adapt. There's a really cool article we wrote on growing mangoes in Italy that's increased, I think, tenfold over the last few years because the climate in the Mediterranean has gotten so much hotter that it's more similar to the places around kind of India, Peru, where you typically grow a lot of these mangoes. And so they said, well, we can't grow some of the things we used to grow, olives and olive oil, but we can start growing mangoes. I think we need to start thinking about that at a global scale. How do we adapt our global food supply chain so that you can start growing things in places that you didn't used to, but also this is really difficult to accept that you're not going to be able to harvest certain crops in places that you're used to. Think cocoa, right? And the Ivory Coast and Ghana as an example. Oranges out of Florida. I mean, Florida used to do 200 million boxes of oranges. That's down 98%. That's not coming back. What can you start growing in Florida that will thrive in this new climatic environment that they're feeling?
And I realize that some people are going to get a little bit weirded out when I say, like, this is why genetically modified food is a good thing at times, because if we're going to keep certain crops in the ground, we need heat resistant. That goes for the slip gene for cattle, that kind of all those things. I'm not saying yes or no to it. I'm just saying this is the innovation that's happening. You have your opinions about it. That's what's we're going to have to do is more innovation ultimately. And it's going to require tech and data.
I completely agree. Yeah. I mean, it's really hard, right? We're really close to a lot of like regenerative agriculture departments across major CPGs. Mm-hmm. And even the folks that are doing really incredible work, right? Your Unilevers, your Nestle's, they're very aware that you're not getting the yields you need if it's just regen. And then you need that level of genetic innovation, whether we like it or not, right? For some of these crops to be able to adapt, or you're just growing fewer of them and they're naturally a lot more expensive. Mm-hmm. And I am not a fan of saying like food just needs to be more expensive. I think that's a very incorrect and relatively privileged point of view.
Yes.
For the vast majority of people, like food should not be more expensive, right? Food should try and make food as available and as cheaply as humanly possible so that people can eat.
Exactly. Otherwise it'd be chaos. Also, where you were talking about the Italy mango situation, I was thinking about how closely we identify our cultures as humans with food. We basically just said that at the beginning of the show with, favorite food memory, and how people are going to have to let go of their identity as it relates to certain things in order to thrive and to push through. And it seems like a very simple thing to do, but it's not. It's hard. If you associate yourself with this is my cultural standard for what food is to me, that's going to be difficult. That's going to be generations to get through that. And
absolutely, yeah. And what does it look like if we live in a world where you can't have certain fruits and vegetables available year round? Maybe you can't have blueberries whenever you want them because this is relatively new, right? Think of how wonderful it is that you can go to the supermarket and get whatever you want at whatever point in time because you have this beautiful global supply chain. That's what's at risk now. It is also so interconnected. Mm-hmm. Remember, the United States had a pretty bad raspberry crop, I think 2 years ago. And so American buyers went over to Europe and bought basically all the excess raspberries to freeze it, right, to bring it back. Mm-hmm. And so the prices of raspberries kind of skyrocketed. In Europe, it was pretty problematic. That's something that if you thought about the business, right, no one in Europe is thinking, God, it looks like the Americans had a really bad harvest. I guess my prices are going to go up. But that's how interconnected the food supply chain is now. And that's how we have to think about it really at that global level and the different levers that happen.
Yeah. And I think we kind of get too regionalized a lot with our food supply. And it really is very much a global place. I mean, we get food from everywhere, like you just said, and people are constantly moving food and buying food overseas and coming over. I mean, we were talking a lot about, I crave things from places I haven't been in a while and how I would have to probably ship certain things over if I wanted them. And that's not always a viable thing, let alone to do because it may not be able to be transported. Or would it be safe for me to get it that way? The other thing too is to think about is if we're moving food so many places and so fast, but do you track invasive species as well and how that interacts like on a ship, a bug or whatever and brought this way or vice versa the other way? Is that something that also you account for in your pricing and data?
Partly, yeah. Yeah, we scrape 250,000 sources every 15 minutes.
Wow.
It's extraordinary. It's pretty cool.
It's insane, actually.
It's global and you can do it in a bunch of different languages. Basically, we've built a multi-agent Gen AI platform that looks across 250,000 news sources, is picking up the right articles, is scanning them, tagging them, then looking at other type of metadata and then using that analysis. At one point, we had a really cool avian flu dashboard that allowed us to track in real time, when people started to talk about avian flu, where it was spreading, what the geographic locations were, and how that was going to start impacting the prices of eggs. Because chickens typically, the price of chicken is most correlated to the price of feed, except for when you have avian flu issues. And so it is interesting, right? It's almost like not a one-to-one correlation, but pretty close.
It's sort of like being a detective in a way. Like granted, the AI is doing the heavy lifting in this regard, but it's sort of putting the pieces together to understand because it's all systems thinking. It's how we are going to interact with this sphere that we live in. Everything is a cycle. Nature is a cycle. And I find it really fascinating. Like this fascinates me because I know as I deal more with cybersecurity issues within food and agriculture, this is just going to break the system in so many other ways. And if I'm thinking about this, the bad actors are thinking about this, the hackers, the nation states, the people want to do harm to each other or just disrupt and be jerks anyways. And they must be looking at similar data points as well. So it's interesting to me that like force of good and force of bad, when I'm saying that to you, and I'm thinking in the back of my head, what do you think is actually kind of broken our system and we need to really start looking at?
I think the focus is wrong in the way we talk about climate change. I think every co-op that happens, COP, right? Every climate week that occurs, 95% of the stuff that comes out is just garbage. It's totally useless. We are recommitting to these targets that we're never going to fulfill. And regardless of the amount of money and energy and attention that we've spent over the last 20 years, we have not gotten better at reducing our CO2 emissions per capita, period. And it's only going to get worse with artificial intelligence because it needs a lot of energy to do well. And that's not going away.
Yeah.
And it is just astounding to me that you have all of these senior people and like the professional conference circuit, the people who are out there, and I don't really know what they live off of, but they're always at the conferences and they're always doing their thing. It's always the same. Well, we have to recommit and, we really have to think about greenhouse gases, blah, blah. Nothing has changed. Nothing's going to change in the next 20 years. It's only going to get worse. None of the conversation is about how are we adapting to live in this new world. And it is just extraordinary to me that you're not having the conversation about where should you be building new homes? How should you be thinking about your global food supply chain? What are the things that you should no longer be harvesting? You should no longer be planting? How should you think about it much more broadly? There are people who are going to have to move because the places they currently live in are not sustainable anymore. How do we support those people through that transition? None of those conversations are happening at scale. And it is just astounding to me that instead you're spending hundreds of billions of dollars and all of the attention on trying to do something that we've already failed at. It is only going to get worse. I find that it's just absolutely the wrong thing to focus on. Even if you look at like Florida, right? Going back to that example, the state government is paying farmers now not to sell their land to real estate developers, but they can't grow oranges on it anymore. What they should be doing instead is paying them to be able to do that transition. You can't grow oranges anymore, but you can grow pomegranates or passion fruits. Great. That's a whole, but to your point, Kristen, then people have to get more excited about maybe having pomegranate juice or passion fruit juice for breakfast instead of orange juice. I'd be excited about it. That's okay, right? Those are the conversations that I think need to happen.
I think that that's going to come down to a lot of the marketing of these CPGs and other various companies, that they're going to have to encourage the consumer to choose differently. We get on a whole soapbox about this, but consumer behavior is very much driven by these organizations. Whether you believe it or not, it's very true. You are marketed all the time. And it's difficult because you have to make choices, but what information are you given? Do you believe that orange juice is the best option for you for breakfast? No, I mean, I don't personally. It's a lot of sugar for me. I can't do it. I mean, occasionally there's a mimosa situation, but that's different. That's a celebration moment, right?
Have that for breakfast every day,
I mean, not every day. I mean, if I ever live that lifestyle, come find me. I'm probably doing really well. But how do you change that behavior? And how do you encourage the margins of different items to change? You have to get people to realize that they can try something else. I think this is why it's going to be really important to lean on things like social media and the internet in general, is get people to be excited about seasons again. Like, we're going into fall, it's apple season, woo, like get really excited about it. Or it's strawberry season because it's summer, whatever particular thing is for you.
Yeah.
I think I have a degree in environmental management. My new listeners know this. So when I became environmentally conscious and when I started to realize, oh goodness, we have no seasons in the grocery store. I should buy seasonally. I should buy local as much as I can, or encourage local, because you can buy local in the grocery store. It's there. There's little signs that say it. And realizing that that's something that I need to do as a consumer to help, because where your money goes, the trends follow.
Yeah.
And that's really hard. And understanding the volatility of the system and understanding how it goes. And the more I talk with farmers and the more I'm there with them and realizing that, wow, we have failed them on so many levels and we have failed our system on so many levels, that the climate change issue is one of the biggest ones. Because if we had gotten that in order, we wouldn't have these conversations now. We would have a different conversation of how do we sustain that. And it's frustrating.
Just your point. I mean, you vote with your dollars. Right? Mm-hmm. It is the most effective way for you to force companies to change behavior. If you are buying more local, more organic, et cetera, farmers will provide for that, right? Because they see that the market exists. If you start drinking a lot of pomegranate juice for breakfast, people will start planting more pomegranates. There is the beauty, right, in the way the market reacts to that. To your point, you have to be really conscious about the choices you're making. Like almonds, in my mind, are one of the most interesting problems that we have, right? They're incredibly water thirsty. Mm-hmm. The vast majority of the almonds that we grow in California, we're going to China. So what you're basically doing is taking a state that already has a water crisis and you're shipping that water to China. And then we have almond milk and all that stuff. You probably shouldn't be, eating that many almonds or drinking that much almond milk if you care about the water crisis. It's okay if you do, right? We're not going to tell you what you should eat and not eat.
No,
but you should
nobody's
going to be
shaming anybody.
Yeah, but you should at least be informed of the decisions that you're making and the impact they have on the environment around you. And so I think to your point, that's why it's so important to be able to make informed decisions about what are you eating, what are the impacts, what's in it. Yeah,
totally. It's such an interesting thing that you say that, because people they have no awareness of what their food is and how it gets to them and what's the actual supply chain length of the situation and where it touches and what it doesn't touch or what's happening.
And what's the cost, right? What's the labor cost? What's the human cost? What's the environmental cost? Yeah.
Exactly. And farmers know because they're dealing with it every day and they can't win. They can't make both sides happy. They can't make the consumer happy. They're blamed for prices. That's not their fault. They just grow. Yeah. They're just the person, that's it. And it becomes this moment where you start to realize that, I need to make better choices for myself and for my family and for people that I love around me. That doesn't mean that you need to put solar panels on your roof and put a wind turbine out in your backyard or have a victory garden, a gentleman's garden, whatever you call it. I mean, feel free to grow vegetables if you want. It's fine. It doesn't mean you have to turn into something that you think is an extreme one way or the other. There's a halfway point. I have vegetables and herbs in my garden. It's just part of my garden. It's just something that I have there. Changing our mindset about what we choose to drink. Why are we drinking it? Are we drinking it because we have an allergy or is it because we think it's healthier? Okay, so what are the other options that are around that? The interesting thing about almonds that you brought up is the bees. We've got a bee problem and we don't have enough bees and we truck our bees all over the country or we ship them in from Australia to actually pollinate these almonds. It's crazy. But the fact that we have to truck bees from one end of the country to the other seasonally for almonds and cherries and other fruits and vegetables is wild to me. And then now we don't have any bees here because we've got a colony collapse disorder that we still don't understand, that we're shipping them in from Australia. So now Australia has to give us bees. It's like the system is so complex that it starts to like hurt. It starts to hurt a little bit.
That's exactly. And I think that's why people often will just give up.
I want to take a moment to talk about something close to my heart: food security. It's no secret that I live in the United States, and regardless of where you sit on the political spectrum, I think we all can agree on one thing: no one should ever go hungry. As we head into the holiday season, I'd like to encourage you to help where you can. Donate to a local food pantry. You can find one through findhelp.org, or call a local farm and ask if you can sponsor a farm share for a family in need. A great place to start would be localharvest.org. Reach out to your local schools and see if there's a way to support breakfast or lunch programs, or you can be a grocery store buddy for somebody nearby who needs help. Food insecurity isn't just an American issue, it is a global one. And while I'm not sponsored by any of these organizations, I believe in using whatever tools we have to make sure everyone has access to food. Thank you for caring, and now back to the episode.
We spent a lot of time on farms, and I was visiting a lettuce manufacturer, processor, and farm out in California recently, and they showed us these two plastic bags, right? And they said, what is the difference between these two plastic bags? One is, and you look at them and they basically look exactly the same. One is recycled. It costs 2 or 3 times as much as the other one, but we're talking about cents, so it's okay. And the other one is non-recycled, but it's this, perfectly clear, and it's a lot cheaper. And they said, we would be more than happy as a processor to put our lettuce into this recycled bag, right? Yeah, it costs a little bit more, but really it's not enough to make that big of a difference. But you can see it's, like 18% or so less clear. And so people won't buy that produce because it looks a little less ugly next to the perfectly clear, non-recyclable bag. But that's a customer preference where you're like, I want recyclable, but let me go get the really clean, very beautiful packaging for my lettuce. Or, we want romaine. I don't know if you've ever been to a romaine farm. It will break your heart because you're collecting these beautiful romaine lettuces and you're cutting at least 50% of it off to only keep that really shiny core. For no good reason, just because customers prefer kind of a particular color of green. They're very floral looking, aren't they? Very floral, yeah. And you could probably cut, 15, 20% of it, not 50% of it. And so if you go to the field, it's just a field of remains of romaine, if you will, that no one is buying. It's incredibly wasteful.
That's so frustrating to think. Again, this is maybe why people should grow their own vegetables, because you would see how an actual head of romaine looked. It's kind of like broccoli looks very floral and cauliflower looks very floral, but people get the little tight bulbs essentially at the store. You and I are both of the generations that we remember when things weren't wrapped in plastic in the grocery store. I know that people are going to have feelings one way or the other about plastic or whatever. It's fine. I'm not here to tell you right or wrong. That's not this episode, maybe another one. But I will say that it's really maddening that we have to wrap things in plastic now because of food safety. And ultimately, that's what it comes down to, because of the way we've done certain things and certain regulations haven't allowed us to change. And there should be no runoff going into a field. That should be fixed. But then again, if a farmer's doing it correctly, it won't be a problem anyway. So it's so interesting to me. And also there's dirt on your stuff. It came from the ground, has dirt on it. We need to get over it. And
yeah. Just clean it. It's fine. And
it's so funny how
sometimes there's a few little bugs. That's all right.
Yeah,
just,
whatever. It's fine. It's fine. It's okay. And it's funny how we get so twisted up and weirded out when we find a bug on our food or anything like that. It's not pristine. It's wrong. It's just, if you were hungry,
it is remarkable, right? That you're you don't expect any insects on your food, on your fruits and vegetables, but they're grown outside, surrounded by insects.
I mean, I understand not eating things with mold and things like that. I get that. Obviously you don't want to eat things with mold. And I think it's funny
that kind of cheese is pretty moldy.
I mean, yeah, it's smelly, but yes. It's so interesting that we kind of, and I appreciate that there's other companies that are out there that are trying to bring back like ugly fruit food and misfit food or whatever it is.
Misfit foods and stuff.
Yeah, I appreciate that because we need to love on like wonky looking food because it's still food. It's still edible. It's still delicious. And this is why a crop sharing association is really cool to join and be part of. I've had the privilege of it a couple times and I always got weird food and it was like choose your own adventure eating. It really was. Because you're like, what am I getting in this week?
ChatGPT now, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Right. We could just load it in.
Take a picture of it. What do I do with this? You know, you take a picture of your pantry and whatever the CSA sent you and you'll end up with a pretty decent recipe.
I mean, there are many nights where I'm like, I have these 3 items. You need to make me a meal. Like there's been many of that going on. It might be that tonight as well. I don't know. Because chicken something seems to be a very common dish for us. Like, what are we making tonight? Chicken something. I don't know yet. But it's so interesting because you're a company that is ultimately trying to predict what the prices are going to be. But it's so many factors into that. Social, cultural, climate change for sure. Other aspects that are coming, weather, which is tied into, obviously climate change. There's without saying really. It goes without saying. But it's so interesting. I'm finding it so interesting. But was there something about the data when you started getting into it that you were like, whoa, this is really interesting. This is fascinating when you originally started?
It's a really good question. I think when we first started, we set out to just be able to predict agricultural disruptions. We said, all right, we can build a platform and we took the world, we broke it down into 14 million hexagons. Each hexagon is 2.3 kilometers per side. We take daily weather data from each of those hexagons. We have that data historically for 20 years and we forecast it out. And then the interesting part was, then we built these like machine learning models that were specific to each of the crops. It was interesting that it was possible to predict the disruptions. But the way we had to do it is one, there was no database of all the places in the world that are growing these commodities for export.
Yeah.
So we had to build that from scratch. And then there's no database of disruptions. So we had to ask our customers, because for any model, right, you need your output variable. Like what is the outcome that you're training it against? If you're training it against disruptions, what is your list of disruptions? So we had to build both of those in order to be able to train our models and say like, hey, did you catch 90% of the disruptions? Great. Well, what's the list of disruptions? What was surprising for us was just how more prevalent disruptions have become over the last few years. And you miss it in the nuance. And so if you just look at average precipitation, you'd say, oh, it's still broadly in line. But what we're seeing in a lot of regions is, let's say your average precipitation is 30 inches a month, just to make it easier. And you'd say, all right, well, on average, we're getting an inch a month or, 2 inches every 15 days, every second day. What's happened is instead you're getting like 15 inches on day 1, 15 inches on day 5, and nothing for the other 28 days. And that's driving a ton of the disruptions that we're seeing globally. And so you always focus on temperatures and droughts and stuff, and that's important. But it is this new erratic precipitation that makes it incredibly difficult for non-irrigated crops to grow. And even the crops that are irrigated, you're just spending a lot more money watering when you didn't expect to. Yeah. There's a big, we know we talked about the UK. There was a huge potato issue in the UK 2 seasons ago where, the potatoes, they had an okay season. Potatoes are very hardy, right? They had an okay season. They were toward the end, it was perfect. We're going to get these grade A potatoes. And you know what you do with the highest quality potatoes? You make them into French fries.
Of course.
That's interesting. And then there was just a ton of rain. And so you couldn't harvest because the fields had become muddy. And then the potatoes got really fat and bloated. And so you lost a percentage in the harvest. And then when you got these like overly large bloated potatoes and you put them in storage, you lost another 4% to mold. And so it was really interesting that you are really starting to see kind of really negative impacts of this erratic precipitation in ways that people don't typically talk about on a climate change perspective.
Well, most people don't even realize. Again, we have no idea that 2 years ago was like biblical flooding. It was awful. They could not harvest and they lost their crops. I think everybody kind of lost that year in the UK for the most part in those regions that were hit the hardest. And it was devastating, really. What do? You have to buy potatoes from somebody else, That's the only way to do it.
Kristen, exactly. What if that starts to happen instead of every 20 years, every 5 years? We have a huge farmer we support out in Brazil. We don't typically work with farmers, right? We work with the people who buy and sell the commodities, but we have partnerships with farmers. A big one of our partners in Brazil, they have, I think, 10,000 hectares of coffee trees.
Yeah, we're talking about like, these are like helicopter. You have to fly from one end to the other of the farm. It's that big,
Twice for him. He's planted new 5,000 new hectares of coffee trees. Twice the trees have died because of unexpected frosts. It takes 5 years to get your money back from a coffee tree. And so his big thing is like, this used to happen once every 10 or 15 years. And I knew I could get my return on investment. Mm-hmm. And now I've lost 5,000 hectares of coffee trees twice in 5 years. Is this the new normal? And if it is, how do you possibly keep planting coffee trees?
On top of that, why would you keep doing it? That's like failure on failure. That's not good for your mental health and your well-being, let alone your family and all these other things you've got to keep up as a farmer. That to me is, you've got to deal with loss. Like that's a hard human emotion. I mean, grieving is one of the worst things we do as humans next to shame. And how do you pick yourself up and keep moving?
Yeah. Well, and from a financial perspective, right? Mm-hmm. It's interesting because it's incredibly expensive to lose your crop, but also financial institutions will only loan to you if you are growing the same crops on the same farm that you have historically. So he tried to go to the bank and said, I should no longer be growing coffee here. I should grow something else. Mm-hmm. And the bank said, that's really cute. We will loan you the money to buy more coffee trees, but not to do anything else. Yeah, you need those financial incentives for it to work, right?
We're Ands and Sage, and if you're in food production, agriculture, and even running a zoo or an aquarium, we need to talk. Because let's be honest, your operation relies on a lot more technology than most people realize. Grain dryers, hatchery controls, life support systems for animal habitats, all connected, all critical, all often overlooked when it comes to cybersecurity. That's where we come in. At Ands and Sage, we help industries that grow, feed, and inspire the world manage cybersecurity and operational risks. Without the fear tactics, the fluff, or the 200-page audit you'll never read. Whether you're producing milk, processing seafood, or running life support systems, we focus on what matters. Keeping your operations safe, your people protected, and your business running, even when things go sideways. And hey, we know not everyone on your team speaks cyber. And because not everyone on your team speaks cyber, we've created a free resource library at andsandsage.com. Inside, you'll find sector-specific infographics built for teams in agriculture, seafood, zoos, and aquariums. They're clear, practical, a little witty, and designed to help frontline teams understand the risks without needing a translator. No logins, no email required, no catch, just usable tools that make cybersecurity stick. If you're responsible for keeping food moving, animals safe, and systems online, Ands and Sage is your partner in real-world resilience. Visit andsandsage.com to download your free infographics, book a consult, or just learn more about how we're helping critical infrastructures secure what matters most. Ands and Sage, helping the industries that grow, feed, and inspire the world manage cybersecurity and operational risks.
So we're going to have to create coffee tree strains that can handle frost, essentially, is what the only way he's going to ever be able to keep up, really.
If all he's going to be able to do is, Yeah. But to your point, right, if you have regular flooding, maybe you stop growing perennials and maybe you start growing rice. Hey, we're going to have flooding again this year. Let's grow rice. And then suddenly you're not just doing champagne in the UK, you're doing rice.
I mean, I don't really think the UK is going to like that since they're very big on their potatoes. I feel like that's going to hurt a lot. So again, this goes about changing your culture to rice from potatoes. I just don't see that happening.
Fish and chips? Fish and rice is the new thing. It's totally fine.
We could talk about fish all day long. However, I know that you aren't doing proteins as of yet.
Not yet.
But you will be. And then there's a whole new world that will open up and it will just be even more wild because the way we do proteins is going to change too. The way we adapt and move things around like that is insane as well. Not to mention that the majority of the things that we grow also go towards protein. So that's really fascinating to think about too.
Yeah.
So if we can't grow food to feed the animals that feed us, we're in a bigger problem too. It's not just like we can't get almonds. We literally can't get feed to these animals and we require protein if you eat meat. And that's really interesting. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about all these disruptions and I'm thinking about all the cyber disruptions that I know about and the ones that even the ones that aren't publicized that I know about. And this is going to become a bigger problem too, because this is how we go into attack each other moving forward. And this is how we're going to, better way to say it is war. And it's already happening and we're seeing it in real time right now, unfortunately. And how corporations will compete with each other and things like that. And it's going to be just another layer of data that's going to help your company explain and predict, but also another way that's going to drive prices. because, we've had cyber interruptions and disruptions already, especially this year. And it's been detrimental in pricing and things like that. Somebody's going to make up the loss. Is it going to be the consumer? And if we go in through, God help us, if we go through another pandemic, that's going to drive prices again. There's so many factors to this data. I'm super fascinated. I hope everybody hears that because this is fascinating information. But as we're wrapping up, and I know this has been a little bit gloomy and doomy a little bit, but I want to know, so you've done, geopolitical risk, you've been in conflict zones, you're an author of a book, which I'll definitely link in the show notes, and now food systems. So is this work really about peace, or is it more of like a new battleground for you?
I think it's about solving problems. So I'll give you 3 different examples. When I was in grad school, I was doing some really cool research on radicalization in refugee camps in Yemen, Pakistan, and Somalia. Mm-hmm. And when I went to visit and did the study, it turns out that there's very few university scholarships, refugees basically, that are in the camps. There's a lot of support for primary, secondary education. So a lot of folks said, why would I ever go to high school and graduate from high school? Even if I make it to university, there's no way for me to get there. So I started an NGO that I ran on the side, that was giving university scholarships to these refugees so they could go to university and then go back to the camps and teach, and it created this really nice life cycles. Mm-hmm. You identify the problem, you come up with the solution. For words, almost totally different problem I had. I read the news. This was before podcasts were really big. On my phone while driving, I almost crashed into a lamppost. And I said, it'd be really good. We could just get a text-to-speech engine on top of an RSS feed. I created a mobile app that did that. It was called Hear Your News. And you could, pick and choose the articles you wanted from the different RSS feeds that you subscribe to, and it would read to you in different voices. And I think for Helios, it was the same, right? We knew that there was a problem around agricultural disruptions, price volatility, and I felt that we could build a solution that would really address it. I think that's what I'll probably do for the next 50 years. Just keep finding some interesting problems and trying to solve them.
I think that's great. And I love how you've taken your background in a way and pushed it into your present, because it's all the knowledge you had before, your troubleshooting, your aptitude, and thoughts around how processes work together in a system. It's very clearly established here. It makes sense. And also the agricultural bit makes sense to me too, because it all flows in the same sphere. Because if people can't eat, they're going to cause problems, and then there's going to be issues. And I think we're in a really pivotal time, not just with climate change. I think geopolitically, we're in an interesting time frame globally. I'm not picking on any country specific. I think that in this new digital world between AI and all these other things, I think we're in a really pivotal time with cyber, since we still don't have right protections in place with different things, especially in our food and ag sector. And I think that this is going to be, I guess, watch this moment. I feel like I said that a lot on the show. We're just going to watch the moment. We're here, but we can't troubleshoot until we see what's going to happen. And it's going to be really interesting moving forward, especially in the next probably 5 years, really, ultimately, how things are really going to play out.
I was just going to say, there is a lot of hope with what we're seeing, at least from an AI perspective. Like, I know we're worried about job losses, and that's definitely something we need to worry about. We're really worried about climate change, but there is so much potential with artificial intelligence across not just getting better yields with the existing crops you have, because you can irrigate better and you can do different fertilizers. You can do new genetic sequencing for new, strains of crops that we hadn't thought of before. So it really might, I'm a techno optimist in that sense. We really are at that pivotal moment where, like, despite some of the things we look at that we go, it could be a really bad next 10, 15 years. I think it might be an extraordinary 10, 15 years where we're able to solve a lot of these problems that we have with technology.
And like you said, if we can change how we do certain things and adapt and adjust a little bit, we can have really high yields in different aspects. Sure, you may not have something specific on whatever day you need it, but that doesn't mean you won't get it. At least it will still be available at some point in the year. I think that's the goal right now, is to make sure you can still have it at some point. You just may not have it right when you want it. Yeah. And I think people need to adjust to that, and that will cause some tensions and some stress for sure, which I think is such a privileged moment, because if you really understood food insecurity, then you wouldn't have a problem with that at all. Same with water and things like that. And that's actually something that I'm interested to see what AI is going to predict around water, because that is drought as a problem. We only get one water cycle, and it's a big problem. And I think AI will be able to start predicting how it can help us with that. Not to mention, water is used to cool the data centers that AI is in. So it's quite an interesting time we live in, honestly. I still think there's a lot of hope. I'm not saying there's all gloom and doom. I just really want us to go thank farmers more and be in that moment and be present with it, and be really grateful for the food that's on your table. Really have that moment with it, because it is special. It is special every time. A lot of people sit down and they pray before their meals, or they have their religious moments in front of it. Thank the farmer while you're doing it. That's the important moment. Or when you go out to a really amazing meal, thank the chef. Thank the people that made your food and that are responsible for it, because they're part of the chain. It's all one big connected group. Thanks so much for being here. This was like a super fascinating conversation. I feel so enlightened. Like, yes, this is great.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure.
A huge thank you to Francisco for joining me and sharing how his company, Helios AI, is using technology to make our global food systems more resilient. And to you, thank you for listening, for sharing, and being part of this community. If you enjoyed today's episode, remember to like, comment, and share. It really does help others find the show and keeps these conversations growing. You can also check out my Substack and the Bites and Bites podcast website for additional content, behind the scenes stories, and updates from our guests. Link is in the show notes. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.